Ukraine is in talks to acquire the THAAD missile defense system from the US. If you've been following the Ukraine war, then you're no stranger to the relentless aerial bombardment raining down on Ukraine's cities. Russia's strikes, often indiscriminate and seemingly allergic to military precision, amount to what can only be described as an airborne temper tantrum with lethal civilian consequences. But in response to the recent move by Biden to allow ATACMS strikes in Russia, Putin decided to up the ante by deploying an intermediate-range ballistic missile, an IRBM, equipped with a multiple independently targetable reentry vehicle, or MIRV. This particular flavor of mayhem is called the Oreshnik, Russian for hazel tree. Hazel tree, is that right? My Russian is very rusty, but okay. The Oreshnik, or hazel tree. Anyways, it made its explosive debut with a strike on Dnipro a couple weeks ago, and Putin now says he may strike Ukraine with a lethal new ballistic missile in the coming days. So, is the THAAD the solution to closing Ukraine's skies? Well, let's discuss. Hey friends, Wes here, veteran, defense analyst, and I speak Russian because разумно изучать противника. The Oreshnik can carry up to 6 warheads, each merrily targeting a different location on the descent. It's like a grim party popper, except each pop lands on something random. And while early reports wrongly tagged this as an intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, Ukraine sits close enough to Russia where the difference between an ICBM and an IRBM is purely academic. Here's a fun historical tidbit. Russia technically can't launch an ICBM without giving the US a heads up. This rule is rooted in the 1988 agreement on notification of ICBM and submarine-launched ballistic missile launches. Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev hashed this out during one of their "Let's not destroy the planet" chats. And let me tell you, it's a riveting read if you're out of Ambien and you need to fall asleep quickly. The idea was simple. If one side launched a missile, the other wouldn't assume it was Armageddon and retaliate. The agreement only applies to ICBMs and SLBMs, submarine launched, leaving IRBMs, like the Oreshnik, in a moral gray area, or as Moscow likely sees it, fair game for regional shenanigans. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Russia presumably inherited this obligation. And I should note that Russia did warn the United States just before the MIRV strike on Dnipro. So the spirit of this agreement seems alive and well. Oh man, fish burps. I took an omega-3 fish oil supplement this morning. I love feeling like I'm at Red Lobster at 10 in the morning with fish burps. We'll cut this part out. Or maybe we'll leave it in. Hashtag fish burps. So, should Ukraine get the THAAD? Well, in light of Russia's new MIRV antics, Ukraine is in talks to bolster its air defense network with options ranging from upgrading its current Patriot systems to acquiring the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, or THAAD. For context, November's Russian strike on Dnipro marked the first confirmed combat use of a MIRV missile armed with, allegedly, conventional warheads. I say allegedly because there's no conventional use case for the Oreshnik. It's about as accurate as a Civil War era cannonball. If you've got a nuclear payload, accuracy becomes optional. With conventional warheads, you just look incompetent. So let's call this MIRV deployment what it is: political theater. Think of it as Putin standing on stage yelling, "Look what I can do," except the audience is mostly unimpressed, and some are starting to giggle. While the MIRVs targeting Dnipro might not have carried a nuclear payload, the kinetic impacts alone were enough to send a chill down anyone's spine. It doesn't take much imagination to envision what these strikes would look like with nuclear warheads attached. So Ukrainian investigations are ongoing, and some claim the warheads had no explosives at all, just the impact of Mach-speed metal hitting Earth. Either way, the message is clear. Putin wants everyone to know that he's willing to use nukes. This delivery method was both a test of the Oreshnik and a message to the West. Enter the THAAD. the missile interceptor extraordinaire. THAAD, developed by Lockheed Martin, is the missile defense system you call when your airspace is turned into a free-for-all. Designed to intercept short, medium, and long-range ballistic missiles during their terminal descent, THAAD is essentially a bouncer of the nightclub of the sky, and MIRVs are definitely not on the guest list. Actually, THAAD is the best product to come out of Ronald Reagan's Star Wars initiative in the 1980s, also known as the SDI, or Strategic Defense Initiative, which was meant to provide a missile shield over the US to protect against Soviet nukes. Some historians claim that SDI was a contributing factor to the bankruptcy and collapse of the Soviet state, as the Soviets simply couldn't keep up with Reagan's staggering defense spending. And they might be onto something. Reagan went from $267.1 billion in 1980 to $393.1 billion in 1988. That's, carry the one, 5.8% of GDP at the time, which represented 27.3% of public expenditure on the military. Regardless, SDI was a pipe dream. The tech simply didn't exist, but it did provide tangible benefits in the form of research and development, of which THAAD was a beneficiary. Now here's where it gets cool. THAAD can intercept targets both inside and outside the atmosphere, topping out at Mach 8.2, or 6,300 miles per hour for those keeping score. Its missiles destroy targets through kinetic impact, a concept known as hit to kill. In layman's terms, it obliterates missiles by slamming into them at insane speeds. And it works. Lockheed Martin claims a 100% success rate in testing, with 16 kills out of 16 attempts. If you're a missile aimed at US interests, THAAD is basically your worst nightmare. Putin wrongly claimed that there are no air defense systems on Earth that can defend against an ICBM or an IRBM. The guy must be smoking that wacky tobacco, because the US has had the ability to intercept ICBMs for decades. Could THAAD handle the Oreshnik? In short, absolutely. The Oreshnik is a variant of the RS-26 Rubez quasi-ballistic missile, precisely the kind of threat THAAD was built to neutralize. But there's a catch. THAAD systems don't come cheap. A single THAAD battery costs a jaw-dropping $1.25 billion, with each missile interceptor priced at $12.6 million. It's no wonder there are only 7 THAAD batteries deployed globally, in places like South Korea, Israel, and Guam. For Ukraine, getting its hands on one would be a changer of the game, if you will. But it would also be a logistical headache and a juicy target for Russian forces. It's one thing to field Patriots, which are already high on Moscow's hit list. THAAD would be a whole new level of must destroy. So what about those Patriots? Well, THAAD is a tempting option, but upgrading Ukraine's existing Patriot systems might be a more practical solution. Patriot PAC-3 interceptors, unlike their Gulf War-era predecessors currently being used in Ukraine, are highly capable of tracking and tackling ballistic missiles. They offer longer range, higher altitude intercepts, and a radar seeker that allows for better target acquisition during the target's terminal phase. In other words, they give Ukraine a fighting chance against Russian IRBMs without breaking the bank or making Kyiv an even bigger target. Now, President Zelensky has just asked for 10 to 12 more Patriots after Russia's latest strike against Zaporizhia this week, which has killed at least 9 people as of this video. Let's not overlook the bigger picture here. Putin's MIRV stunt is a textbook move of a leader running out of options. If Russia had the military capability to topple Kyiv conventionally, we'd have seen it by now. Deploying MIRVs in a regional conflict reeks of desperation, not strength. Imagine if the US had used submarine-launched MIRVs against Iraq in 2003. Sure, it would have been a spectacle, but completely unnecessary when other, less dramatic tools could get the job done. Putin's reliance on the Oreshnik shows he's grasping at straws and burning through them at an alarming rate. As winter sets in and Moscow ramps up its campaign against Ukraine's energy infrastructure, Kyiv's ability to defend its skies will be more critical than ever. Whether that defense comes in the form of THAAD, Patriot Upgrades, or some combination of both, the stakes couldn't be higher. For now, Ukraine needs tools, not theater. THAAD might look good on paper, and Lockheed's glossy brochures, but Patriots might be the better bet in this high-stakes chess game. One thing is clear, Putin's regime is weaker than it looks. The use of nuclear-capable MIRVs in a regional war is less a show of strength and more a neon sign flashing, "Help!" So, what's the verdict? Should Ukraine get the THAAD? Maybe. But upgrading their Patriots to PAC-3s seems like a more strategic move for now. It's a cost-effective way to deal with Russian missile threats without giving Moscow an even bigger target to aim at. And as for Putin's MIRV stunt, it's nothing more than a desperate gambit from a leader running out of moves. Let's not get distracted by the fireworks. Instead, let's keep Ukraine armed and ready to win this fight. That's all for today, team. Remember, every show of force from Moscow is just another reminder of how weak they really are, especially when they target civilians. Subscribe if you're not already, because the more subscribers this channel has helps keep the video production alive and healthy. I like making videos. Presumably, you like watching videos because you're on YouTube right now. Subscribe and help keep this channel a growing threat to Putin's narratives. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Slava Ukraini.